This week on Moulz and Mel at the Movies, we discuss the 1995 film Tales from the Hood, directed by Rusty Cundiff and starring Clarence Williams III, Corbin Burnson, and many other people. David Alan Grier, lots of fucking people. Listen, a funeral director. He tells 4 strange tales of horror with an African-American focus to 3 drug dealers he traps in his place of business, the Sims Funeral Home. Ah, I'm scared. It's Moulz and Mel at the Movies. Let's go.
That was our favorite intro yet. That was amazing.
Welcome to Moulz and Mel at the funeral parlor.
Yeah, at the theater inside the funeral parlor.
Yes, you know, Moulz and Mel at the Movies, Patreon exclusive. For those of you listening isolated right now, the rest of the review, the soundtrack, is available on patreon.com/Rap Rankings. You get a lot of exclusive content on there. A lot of great episodes.
You get content, but that Patreon's there to show support to Moulz and Mel, 2 souls who have dedicated themselves to talking for hours every week. You know?
That's all we do. Our lives revolve around this shit.
That's right. We wouldn't have it any other way. There's nothing else to do in life. So, yeah.
Well, you're going to actually have to explain the rating system because normies are hearing this.
Oh, right. Yeah. No problem. We want to be accommodating. We want to be welcoming. You know, we want new people. So here we go. Folks, this is the rating system. The rating system is simple. Each film is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. These numbers do not reflect the quality of a film, as that is indeterminable. Instead, each number reflects a level of enjoyment. In short, here's what each number means. 10 means this is a perfect film to me, one of my favorite films of all time. 9 means I love it. 8 means I like it a lot. 7 means I like it. 6 means it's alright. I don't dislike it, but I can't say that I like it. 5 means I feel practically nothing about this. 4 means it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I dislike it. 3 means I dislike it. 2 means I hate it. And 1 means I absolutely can't stand it. One of the worst things I've ever seen. Side note, you might hear us add a plus or a minus to one of those numbers. Understand the pluses and minuses have no mathematical or statistical value. They are merely indicators that mean one of 2 things. 1, it's like saying a strong or light version of that number. So like 7 plus, it's strong 7. 8 minus, light 8. Second, it's basically saying it could go up or down in the future. The ratings aren't static on this show. So 7 plus could one day be an 8 minus. We could come back in a later show and be like, you know what, I was tripping. It's better. Or your 7 plus could drop as low as a 4. You never know and be like, I don't know. I was smoking weed that day. I don't smoke it, but Moulz does. So maybe he'll be tripping. And yeah, you know, so don't trip when you hear the pluses and minuses. You know, they're just indicators. So that's it. That's basically it. That's the rating system. You think they got it?
I think so. Before we give our ratings, let's discuss our familiarity with this film, a film I know we're both very familiar with.
My God. Okay. Well, I'll go first because mine's going to be a lot quicker than yours. So I first saw this film as a youth. I must have been between the ages of 4 and 8. And I'm pretty sure the first viewing was in my grandma's basement, which is on the south end of Peoria, Illinois. So full disclosure, this would be the hood. So it was, I don't know, maybe that it was some extra, it was extra potent because I was in the hood when I was watching it. But it was on VHS, had to be, because this was like the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And I remember being freaking terrified. And I was scared even before like the end when, you know, what happens with the transformation. I don't know. I mean, if they're listening to this thing, they've probably seen the film, so I can like spoil things, right? You know, like,
we always spoil things on
I mean, if it's a review, people, I would guess they've seen the film. We can't do an audio film review without spoiling things. Yeah, I think that would be kind of ridiculous.
We can do a synopsis, we can do recommendations and tell you what the movie's like, what it's about, but come on, right. You want an in-depth, you know, review and an analysis of everything, we gotta spoil some shit. So
gotta spoil it.
I think that's a given before all our reviews. If you've never seen this film and you're the type of person who don't or doesn't rather want
like a brand new grandchild in the arms of a grandparent, you gotta spoil it, you know? So listen, folks,
spoil it.
Gotta spoil it. And I was scared of this film even before the end, where Clarence Thomas the third?
Yep.
Is that his
Well,
name?
no, Clarence Williams the third. Clarence
Williams.
Thomas is
Who is Clarence
complete.
Thomas?
Oh my goodness.
Who is Clarence Thomas?
He's
Where am I
a
getting this from? Clarence. Oh, he's a
he's a guy. He's a guy.
he's a Supreme
He's
Court
a Supreme Court
justice.
guy. Yeah. That's Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas whole thing.
Yeah,
That whole
Sotomayor, all them people. F them people. I don't like them people.
I hate talking about those people, honestly.
Judges
No,
wearing
this is
wigs
Clarence-
and stuff.
this is
Okay,
Clarence
Clarence Williams
Williams
the third. He should be on the Supreme Court. Okay, he's great.
He should be on the $100 bill as
He should.
Mr. Sims.
As Mr. Sims. Oh my God, I would collect so many. Listen, that's a reason to get money. You know, that money, it's whatever. But if he was on it, I'd get more.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Before he even turned into a demon, I was afraid because I found him to be frightening. You know, yeah. So I was scared of this film as a kid, just terrified. I was a very frightful youth anyway. But I saw it again later, probably as a teenager, late teens, and I was like, oh, this is great. You know, now that I'm no longer afraid and I can actually sit through and watch the whole thing, I'm like, oh, this is great. Right up my alley. I love this stuff. Love horror, anthologies. Love this. And then I saw it again recently for this show. So it's always been a film I've had history with and been fond of, even when I was too afraid to watch it. I love the style of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with The Crypt Keeper, who I was deathly afraid of and had nightmares of for years. You know, I would see him and cry. I was that frightened of the Crypt Keeper, but I loved him though. Don't get the fright mistaken for hatred or something. I love this man, the Crypt. He's not a man. He's a puppet. He's a man. He's the man. All right. I love the Crypt Keeper, but he scared me to tears. I love this film, even though I couldn't watch it as a kid. So that's pretty much it. I was excited when we were getting ready to do this because I knew I liked the film. So how about you?
Very familiar with the film. Seen it many, many times. I was a big Tales from the Crypt fan growing up.
Same.
So when I saw this film on the shelves, I thought, oh, Tales from the Hood. This has to be somehow related to Tales from the Crypt.
Which is reasonable to assume, but it's not, right?
It's not. It has no affiliation to Tales from the Crypt. In fact, as I'll get into a little bit, based on the audio commentary that I listened to on the Blu-ray, it wasn't even mentioned. So, like, it's definitely, there's no connection whatsoever. But in 1995, you know, Tales from the Crypt was still on HBO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was probably nearing the end of its run.
It's nearing the end. It ended in 96, I believe.
Right.
Season 7 was in 96. And then it went into syndication, I think first on Fox and then on Sci-Fi. But this isn't about Tales from the Crypt.
Right.
But my fondness for anthology horror, Tales from the Crypt, all of that stuff, and just, you know, roving the video store shelves as a kid, especially loving the horror section because of all the lurid artwork. Everything was so, like, fantastical.
Some of the best artwork in the game is from them horror movies.
Yeah, so, like, you know, I saw this cover for a little while, and it was cool because if you've ever seen the poster, which was, like, also the DVD and VHS cover, it's a skull with some sunglasses on and one gold tooth.
Yeah.
And on the VHS box, that gold tooth was like a gold foil print.
Yeah.
And it shimmered. So, like, it caught my eye. And it was right, keep in mind, being such a Tales from the Crypt, like, freak, when I go to the horror section, I go to T first.
Right. And
Because I want to see, do we have any new Tales from the Crypt VHS tapes? They put out, you know, HBO Home Video put out tapes with like 3 episodes apiece on them. So maybe they got the movie from the 70s. Maybe they got Demon Knight. You know, maybe they got one of these Tales from the Crypt VHS tapes. So I always go to T first. Tales from the Dark Side, right? Like, all Tales just like brings me to a place. Just the idea of Tales. So I went to T, and this one was always looking at me for like a year or so. I think I finally saw it a year later. My friend Kevin had the VHS in his house.
Wow. So you had never rented it. You just happened to go to somewhere where it was.
I had seen it for a little while first.
So he was just staring at you like, "What you gonna do, white boy?"
Yeah, exactly. The skull was like, "You gonna rent me this week?" And I'm like, I'm thinking about it, but I want to see Puppet Master first.
And the skull was like, "Yeah, all right."
And you ain't black.
That's right. Basically, my friend Kevin had the tape, right? And he wanted to show me the puppet segment.
Okay.
So he showed me the puppet segment, and I was like, "No, what? This is amazing! I gotta see the movie." So I asked him if I could borrow the tape.
Right.
And he said no.
He said no?
Yep. He wasn't going to lend me the Tales from the Hood tape. So
yo, I was not expecting that.
So that week, the next time we went to the video store, because I remember Palmer Video on Willis Avenue, Palmer Video became West Coast Video.
Okay.
And I think it was still Palmer at the time, but perhaps it had just switched over to West Coast. Either way, I remember distinctly renting it and watching it at home first, like the whole way through.
Okay.
And I never owned it on VHS, but I rented it a few more times after that. DVD comes along, and I buy the movie finally. It's in one of those snapper cases. You know, the ones with
the original DVD cases with the plastic snap on the right side.
But if I recall correctly, no foil on the tooth.
Oh, man.
I have a feeling it didn't have the foil. Maybe I'm misremembering. But either way, I finally own the film. And on DVD, so like good quality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been one that I've watched. It's a frequent rewatch for me. So I've seen this movie over a dozen times, easily.
Nice.
This time, though, I decided to do something a little bit different because I've seen the movie so many times.
Tell them what you did. Tell them how you switched it up.
What more could I add? What color can I add here to this instead of just doing what I usually do? So I got the collector's edition Blu-ray from Scream Factory, and there's a new making of documentary on there I didn't get a chance to watch yet, but it's like an hour long. Okay. I'm just saying that in case you guys like this movie and you don't know it's on Blu-ray. There's a cool hour-long documentary on here. There's the vintage featurette that was from the original DVD, theatrical trailer, TV spots, all that stuff. But there's an audio commentary on here, which may have been ported over from the original DVD release. This audio commentary with the director, Rusty Cundiff.
Nice. So look at that.
So I decided to watch the film today and take some notes while I listen to the director talk about the film. And I have a lot of notes here about the film.
Jesus Christ.
Before we get into all of that, let's get our ratings out of the way.
All right. Well, yeah, let's just start up there. I mean, usually when we watch films, they're not in like anthology format, you know, so it's usually not as simple. Now, I mean, I didn't go strictly mathematical. Like I did rate each segment and like the wraparound, like framing, you know, story. Okay. But
that's not how you rated the film overall.
Yeah, no, I didn't absolutely stick to like, all right, let's add all that up together and divide it by.
Either. Yeah, I didn't do that either.
But I did look at those as sort of references.
I go with my overall feel about everything.
Yeah.
But I am a big fan of the anthology format, from television, like stuff like Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, to how they've kind of done stuff like American Horror Story and True Detective, like season-long anthologies where it's a different story each season. I know Fargo does that too on FX. And then obviously like the anthology movies, especially from Amicus Studios in the 70s, who were like mainly focusing on putting out anthology horror movies. I mean, I just love the subgenre, if you will. So I'm glad that we ended up switching the Patreon review from Bones with Snoop Dogg to Tales from the Hood, because it's cool that we get to discuss the anthology style and formatting and stuff like that this season. As I imagine this is probably the last season we'll be able to really dive deep into film, aside from, here or there, the odd soundtrack we end up doing in the future. So,
I mean, we ain't a film podcast, so
ain't.
y'all gotta enjoy it if you gonna enjoy it, because you might not get it much more, if ever. Probably get it sometime in the future, but who knows?
Here and there, but never another full season of film reviews.
Right.
I could see Bones making it to like a future season, like on its own. But like we'll have to see. I want to see the numbers on this season over time do what like the Jay-Z season has been a real slow burn, but man, the numbers that have been coming in on that over time have been crazy. But anyway, enough of the housekeeping. Let's give our numbers. Let's give our ratings, and let's get into this review.
I ain't gonna make them wait. 8-.
Okay. 9- for me. It's tied with Hustle and Flow for my favorite film this season.
Okay.
Hustle and Flow is longer, so I guess I'd put that slightly above this just based on the way we rate stuff, like margin of error and all that stuff. Mm. But 9- for me on this. I love this movie.
So you love it, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I feel like, that's just, like, I could talk about some of the things I don't like about this movie, but I love the movie. I feel like I've always loved this movie, even though there's one specific thing, and we'll get to it, that I'm not in love with as much as I am with everything else. So, still one of the best horror films of the 90s to me.
Of all the 90s horror films I've seen, I'll allow that. I will allow that take.
One of the best. Not the best.
Right. You said
because it's not a 10.
Yeah, I'll allow that. Right. Well, I'll tell you, this is the first time I think I've seen it in HD, because I saw it on VHS as a kid. When I saw it again as a teen, I probably got one of them Aligo streams.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably
you probably saw the same transfer as this Blu-ray I watched.
Maybe. Wait, you're asking if I seen it?
No,
I'm saying this time.
If you saw it in
I actually
HD,
paid.
Oh, okay. So if you're watching it in HD, then you're watching the scan that I watched.
Okay, well, I rented it off YouTube. In fact, when I rented it, just like in passing thought, there's like some Playboy Cardi song where he's like, AP wrist, hold up. But it says on YouTube, HD rent. So I was like, HD rent, hold up. And then, yeah. So I rented it like $3.99. It comes on. And, I'm like, here we go. Tales from the Hood. First off, I noticed something very early that I never noticed before. The director of photography's name is Anthony Richmond, which is the name of my uncle.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I've told you, this is the Hill uncle.
So, I'm just going to be dropping facts as we go along.
Okay.
The director said that Tales from the Hood got off the ground because Spike Lee saw Rusty's first film, Fear of a Black Hat, and called him after seeing it, and he asked him, what do you want to do next? And Rusty and his production partner had this script, Tales from the Hood, that they were working on at the time. And, that's how they were able to get this project kind of, Spike Lee hooked them up with Savoy Films.
Nice. Wow. Shoot, I wish we could have had an experience like that back when we were struggling musicians. Put out that daggone we were playing Peoria, and then freaking Billy Joel hits us up. What do you want to do next? But enough about us, or maybe more about us. We're on Patreon. Well, actually, we're not, though, because this is going to be public. All right, enough about us. So, yeah. All right, well, look, Spike Lee came through the lab and got them, the hookup. That's nice.
The Victorian.
That's Black Power, actually. You help your fellow brother get his films popping. I like that.
Now, Fear of a Black Hat was almost. I feel like it was. I want to make sure it came out before CB4, but it was almost like the first CB4. and it was parodying.
CD4.
It was almost parodying though, like the X-Clan Public Enemy type stuff. Like,
Okay.
Fear of a Black Planet, Fear of a Black Hat. Anyway, the home that they used for Sim's funeral home was this Victorian-looking home in LA, and they dressed it up to be Sim's. And when they made this movie, they didn't want the movie to seem like it was shot in LA. So on things like in the first story, the graveyard scene, they have to kind of black out the palm trees in the background so you don't really see them. And they wanted to give this film this feel that it was almost going to take place in any town USA, but specifically not like New York or Los Angeles or something like that.
Okay. Did they shoot the whole film in LA?
Yes.
Like every single one of the... Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And the majority of the film, with the exception of a good chunk of the last story and the scenes in the nurse's office in the second story with David Alan Grier, were all done on a soundstage. And then obviously even the funeral home, the exterior shots and the hallway shots were done at this Victorian looking home. But once they kind of get into the heart of the funeral home,
like
where the caskets are, and everything, that's all on a soundstage as well.
Okay.
By the way, he mentions it early on in the commentary, but I just want to highlight throughout this whole film, this score by Christopher Young. He said he wanted something like classic and campy sounding, like, almost like you're walking through a haunted house.
Mm-hmm.
And the score, I think, is really great. Like, it just kind of smacks you upside the head when they first walk into, the funeral home. The organs, I think they satisfied and everything.
That classic campy. Yeah, they pulled it off.
Yeah. And then, we get that whole thing with the shit. So these three guys,
I wrote down like 3 minutes and 30 seconds in, they're already talking about it, which is one of the, dare I say, more iconic aspects of the film.
The film moves like Rab during season 4. They move at a brisk pace.
Yeah. They don't take long to get to the shit.
Right. So these three guys, they go to the funeral home and they go to Mr. Sims, who's played by Clarence Williams III.
Played excellently. I just want to say that out. He is one of my favorite horror movie characters of all time.
Yes,
he's
Mr.
perfectly
Sims,
creepy.
His facial expressions and even the small gestures, like how he lights his cigar in the beginning.
Yes.
He chews up the scenery. He almost reminds me of like he's doing like a bit of a Vincent Price performance, but even ramped up like the campiness even more.
Yeah.
In the facial expressions. The facials
turned
are
up
almost
to like 11. Yeah, because
like Lon
by the
Chaney,
end, he's like sweating. That was the image that always got burned into my brain as a kid. Him like grinning wildly and sweating. Scared the bejeebies out of me. Okay.
His hair is crazy in this movie. It's like Don King. Clarence's hair in real life isn't like that, but he told the director he'd grow it out and just pull his hair. He said he'd do this thing where he'd pull his hair up until it just naturally went that way.
Nice. I love that. That's some good dedication.
Yeah, so he really, I mean, out of everyone in this film, the guy, basically like the guy who's leading the wraparound story is the most intriguing, like scene stealing guy in the whole film.
For sure. He's basically
out of like a lot of anthologies, actually. I feel like they are that way. I think of like the Amicus film Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Dr. Terror, played by Peter Cushing, is such a cool character. The way that he's almost the opposite of this character, though. He's not totally chewing scenery, but there's something about him that you don't trust and you want to kind of know what it is.
Yeah.
And
you always want to have, I would say with these anthologies, the importance of having a great host.
Yes.
Is,
I mean, think about Tales from the Crypt. The Crypt Keeper is an iconic host. Twilight Zone, Rod Serling is like, he's the moral voice of the show. He's your guide through the Twilight Zone. So, Mr. Sims, I think, is an iconic horror movie character. Now I'm just like, just thinking like this guy should really be up there in the pantheon. And like we should be getting, NECA Ultimate figures of him with like you swap out for the devil head or something. Like
Yeah, I
he's
mean,
an
bro, he
iconic
turns
character.
into a devil. He has a look all his own. The Don King hair, the gap in his teeth, the wild hysterical smiling. Like he's worthy of it.
Yeah.
And
So
even his delivery, like he's not chewing the scenery, bro. I mean, when they're getting upset with him, as they're like, the shit, he's like, oh, the drugs. Like he reminds me of Francis in The Lights. Honestly, the way he's talking about it, he's like, the shit. You get the drugs, then I get the money. This is all new to me. Like the way he's talking is so like
it's almost like
playfully detached and like speaking to himself.
Monologue. Yeah, exactly.
Right, out loud. Exactly.
So
and I love that.
We see the first body in the casket. We dive into the first story, and the director, he wanted to change the tone a little bit, from a little less exaggerated into some more realism. And this is the story that revolves around like police brutality and police murder.
Right.
Which
unfortunately is...
I'm not a big fan of police brutality, but
right, of course.
This is a great story to me. A great way to kick things off. I think that Wings Hauser, like the main asshole cop, is a really like loathsome sort of villain in this one.
Oh, for sure.
I love the murals coming alive on this. The MPAA made them tone down the police beating. There was more blood, and there was a slow-mo of the baton going across his face, but they said it needed to be cut down. And according to the director, he thinks it still worked, but he would have liked to leave those shots in. Right. Also, like the needle injection was a real needle injection. They injected probably
like saline or something.
It's salt water that went into the arm of a PA for that shot.
Oh. Okay.
But yeah, listen, this story in terms of changing the tone of the film, it absolutely does. There's no comic relief. Everything is very dark and surreal.
Yeah. I just want to say, like, you say surreal. What I probably like most about this story is when they do get to the horror elements. I mean, the makeup on the Martin character, God. I love.
Dude, Martin on the crucifix is legitimately horrifying. Yeah. And also the exact kind of like stylistic, impressionistic set piece design and scene design that I come back to horror movies and rewatch them more than I do any other kind of movie, because the imagery is burned in my brain. And
the
big finish with like the needles and just like the syringes and
one
whatnot.
Of the best kills I've ever. I don't know why I didn't remember this, but like when it happened, I was like, wow. Okay, because Martin comes back from the grave and basically starts doing fatalities on all the cops that killed him. He reaches up, grabs the man by the ding-a-ling who's pissing on him, rips his heart out like Kano. The final kill is one of the best kills.
Because they were actually in a graveyard. The piss was colored water.
Oh, okay.
In a ketchup bottle. And they tried to make all these contraptions to make the piss look realistic in its trajectory. But everything didn't come across well on camera. And in a last-ditch effort, they put the liquid into an empty ketchup bottle, and it worked perfectly. Obviously, you don't want to actually desecrate someone's gravesite with urine.
Well, I would have figured they would have just built a fake gravesite and then peed on that. But then again, I guess actually peeing would not be hygienic.
Right.
Okay, good point. All right. Well, it looked real to me, so they pulled it off. And I just want to say, before I even return to the final kill, one thing I noticed. So, like, this is overtly political and it's a social commentary. Down to them playing Blood on the Leaves as he's being beaten to a pulp, it's the thing though. I realized, and I was kind of waiting on it, it never happened. As opposed to a story that comes later, the third story, actually, I wouldn't even say this is concretely racist. The undertones, absolutely, but not once do any of the cops ever say the N-word or call him that. You know, they're not really
boy,
doing it because they do say boy. Like I said, there are undertones.
Yeah, that's like all, but it's all implied racism. It's not
implied.
Overt.
You know, but the reason I point it out is because really they're doing this because he's checking them, this Martin character, because they're corrupt cops selling drugs to the community. So, I mean, there are plenty of times throughout the film where you can say, yeah, they are making a point about racial, you know, injustice. But this is one where it's like,
we'll get into that more later because the director has a lot to say about that. And why he decided to tackle these subjects. I've always thought that horror and science fiction have always been the best and the most subtle and unsubtle ways to deliver social commentary.
Jordan Peele sucks is a hack. I'm sorry.
Subtle and unsubtle ways of delivering social commentary.
He doesn't. I should not be so mean. Jordan Peele's not. I have called him a hack in my private life. This is true. But my issue with him is he doesn't. But this isn't a Jordan Peele review. I'll get to him one day. Let's just say I think he has a ton of potential that he's yet to realize for me. So anyway. This is better. I'll say this. Tales from the Hood is better than Us.
It's better than any Jordan Peele movie. Just to get that out of the way right now.
Yeah,
but
it is to me.
I mean, listen. Just to take a quick stop down the road.
I know they're like, why are you sending strays at Jordan Peele? I don't know.
I think I've mentioned this before, but. I thought Get Out was good, but it fell apart in the third act.
Fell apart in the end.
And my
great
biggest
concept,
issue with
great tension all the way up until the third act.
Yeah, then it becomes a generic Blumhouse horror movie in the third act. And I think The Sunken Place, the production design on it should have been more, I don't know, visually stimulating, let's say. Like something like that would have been a more memorable set piece. Those are my issues with Get Out. Now, I liked Us more.
You like Us and I don't.
I liked Us more because stylistically it had everything Get Out didn't. It had all those memorable scenes and set pieces and like kills and things like that. Like it scratched that itch for me, but it's a 7- to me instead of the 6+ I gave Get Out, because 7- because the movie doesn't make any fucking sense and the logic folds on itself at the end. But freaking Lupita, oh my goodness,
she was the only good thing about that
performance was Oscar worthy. I thought
the only good thing about that film was
in her dual roles, you know. But anyway, if he can merge the stylistic brilliance of Us with the tension and cohesion of
and I would say the conceptual draw,
conceptual draw, and just this like better, more coherent storytelling. Get Out makes sense. Us doesn't make sense.
Look, I'm rooting for him. I want him because I see the potential. I want him to finally make one. I love
horror movies, so I have a vested interest in this, right? Yeah. He's like, to me, I wasn't all the way there with Get Out because of the aforementioned issues I had. Us at least pleased me on a stylistic level, and the acting was great. I thought the acting was really, really good. I would love to see the stylistic elements, those memorable set pieces, those beautiful shots from Us, and the great acting from Us merged with a coherent story like Get Out. And if he can do that, he's not directing the Candyman remake, by the way. That's Nicky DaCosta. He's producing it. So his third feature film, horror film, has not been conceived yet. I would love to see him stick the landing and take both the best of both worlds, his two films, get all the bullshit out of there, and make an 8, make a 9.
You know, make that 8, please do, bro. Because
I wanna be like, yo, like I wanna love one of your movies, but as of right now, I feel like one's I and one I like, but it might just be I. So. Let's get to that. Let's get to the 7+, 8-. I'd love to do it.
I know he's listening. He's like, "Don't call me bro. You just doo-dooed on me." It's like, all right, fine,
I didn't
dude.
Doo-doo.
Listen, You know,
I didn't do
here's the
anything.
thing. No, not you, me. I just do. I call him a hack. But here's the thing, bro.
I didn't call him
Get
a
Out
hack.
6+. Us is a 4 to me.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I still believe in his potential. If he messes up a third time, I'm done. Okay, but I will see the third film, whatever it is. But
I mean, listen, and the other guy that they love talking about, Ari Aster. Okay,
who?
Hereditary, really
Oh,
good.
that's great. I love Hereditary.
I have one specific issue with it. I've mentioned it numerous times. I don't need to get into it again. Midsommar, I don't like it. It's a remake of The Wicker Man.
Didn't like it,
and it's
not.
too
And it's
long.
not because, to be clear, it's not because I'm an incel. I was fine with the. I feel like it got. What happened was I kept expecting
This movie already exists. It's called The Wicker Man.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever seen The Wicker Man.
Except this is with like a little bit of a different, a little bit of more of a female empowerment twist at the end of it. But
it did not subvert my expectations. It ended up doing exactly what I thought it was going to do. When for so much of the film, I felt like it was leading up to something that I couldn't have predicted.
It was so long. It was like 2.5 hours.
And it was long. And it's just once I realized it's going to do exactly what I thought it was going to do, it felt even longer. I was on board with that film totally until like somewhere around the end of the second act. And I'm like, this is going to...
Flat 8, maybe 8- on Hereditary. Oh man, 6- 5+ on Midsommar.
Midsommar, from memory, I think it's like a flat 6 for me. It was going so good. It was going so good.
I gotta watch the director's cut because I heard that they had some stuff in
director's cuts.
But you know what, bro? The director's cut's 3 hours. 3 hours?
I ain't watching that
on a Wicker Man remake for the Teen Vogue crowd.
I know what they're saying. They're like, Mel, you record 8-hour episodes of this podcast. What you mean you can't watch the director's cut? Listen, I don't want to watch.
I can't do both. I can't watch a 3-hour cut and then do an 8-hour cut of my own shit.
I can't watch the cut and cut the episode. Something gonna have to get cut out of the cuts. Okay,
right.
So
and we would like to wish Midsommar's director cut the best of luck on his future endeavors.
Best of luck on his future endeavors. But we ain't got time for that. You know. Why did we even get on this subject? Some Jordan Peele, Midsommar, as Ari.
I talked about social commentary and
right,
because
because I was saying like, it's
definitely a little bit of a tangent. It's okay.
Right, it's implying that there's racism involved, but like the Clarence, the protagonist, I guess, is a black cop who his partner is being okay to at the beginning. But he expects him to stay in his place when he sees his fellow black man getting whooped on, which is, come on. You can't expect me as a black man to watch this blatant injustice go down.
This is because also the director's father was a cop. So some of these stories were drawn on his actual experiences.
Ah, man.
Obviously a little exaggerated, but there's, I don't know about needles in the arm, but
yeah, hopefully he didn't have a white cop partner. It was like, I'm gonna piss on his grave. Like hopefully that didn't happen.
But he had some stake in the game basically for writing it the way that he did. But I love the climax. I love Zombie Martin. He rules.
Zombie Martin is great, and his kill, I don't know why I had never remembered
the needle.
This.
It was like needle kill at the end, right?
The needle, he turns that cop into like a heroin masterpiece. Like he injects him with like mad needles, and then he melts into the mural. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is how do I not remember this happening?
Kill.
It's great. It's outstanding.
It does. I think this one it does a good job of bringing in the horror when it starts to feel almost too police procedural. All these segments, some are better than others, but they all move at a pretty brisk pace.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, just so they know, I gave this segment by itself a flat 7. I like it.
I didn't rate.
If anything, it probably would have been higher for me if it wasn't so close to home. Unfortunately, this is still something we're dealing with.
I mean, what's crazy, about this movie is a lot of this shit is, a lot of these stories would hit just the same with the audience today as they would have 26 years ago.
It's a daggone shame, but it's true. Yeah, and it's not to say like I don't like. It's not a knock on the segment. It can't get higher than a 7 because
some of the stories.
Yeah, some of them. With side eye at the last story, but
we'll talk about the last story when we get to it. I have to unfortunately break from respecting the director for a moment when we get to the fourth story. The commentary didn't help. Let's just put it that way. So we're back in the funeral parlor. In between stories, we get more of the wraparound.
Right.
And it serves to just set up the next story. But
I want to say quickly about the wraparound, though. It's always been interesting to me to basically it's implied that while we're watching these, segments, they're just listening to Mr. Sims, listening intently, as I presume, to him tell these stories.
Yes.
As they're
That's always the funny thing to think about anthologies is we see the story.
Right.
But we have to assume the characters are enraptured by this strange person who's going to recount different stories to them. But they, as we know, those who have seen the film, I hope you have, if you're listening, they got nowhere to go.
Yeah, they've got more than nowhere to go. I love the twist on that. I love it, but it's such a common trope in the anthology films. Amicus would do it several times, not just with Tales from the Crypt 72, but with many of their others, like Torture Garden comes to mind. Dr. Terrors again. Almost like a third of the Amicus anthologies ended with this, it's the devil and they're in hell. I never get tired of it, for the record.
It's just always a great...
It's one of my favorite tropes.
It
is.
Rusty Cundiff talks about it during the credits. You actually heard it, Mel, as I was finishing up the film, that, it's like that almost like classic Christian messaging where it's like, you do bad things, you go to hell, and then you're stuck with the devil for eternity. And he was saying he's not religious himself, but it's just the classic morality play, basically. So we get into our second story, which is about the monster. The monster, and the little kid Walter. Yes. And so I just wanted to just drop some more facts about this particular story, because this is where in the commentary the director starts to talk about the social issues in the film and why he put them in there. Okay. So when he made Tales from the Hood, he wanted to deal with these issues that he felt were real, because that was what was scary to him. Ghosts and monsters and stuff, traditionally, creature stuff, doesn't necessarily scare him, but what scares him? Police brutality, abuse, dysfunctional family, prison, violence, racism, these things that are actually real that can affect you. That's what he thinks is scary, so he wanted to focus on his real fears. In this segment, he plays the teacher. And I didn't know that until you told me that. Yes, and Walter... he said that working with the child actor who played Walter was great, and that Walter was more professional than the majority of the adult actors on set. Well, I recognize, I've seen him in other stuff. I know his face. I can't name any other role right now, but Walter, I've definitely seen him in things. Paula J. Parker, she was... Wait, was he the kid from Soul Food? Oh, wow, really? Was he? Well, hold on. Let me just... Okay, Walter, Tales from the Hood. Okay, Brandon Hammond. Okay, because I know I've seen him in so many things. I know he was in... Yes, he is. South Central. Yep. I think. Yep, and he's in Soul Food. Okay, he's the Fan. Right, Soul Food. He's in The Fan with Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro. Right. He's in Mars Attacks, the Tim Burton movie. He's in a lot of stuff, this kid. Yeah. Sorry, he wasn't in South Central. Sorry, I got him confused with a different kid. But he was in Strange Days, though. He's in a lot of movies. Yeah. So he'd go on to work. But, Rusty was saying, oh my God, this kid was so professional. He was, so easy to work with, much better behaved than the adults and stuff. Shout out to Brandon Hammond. Shout out to him. Hope he's doing well. Paula J. Parker, who we just saw in Hustle and Flow,
Uh-huh.
She plays the mother in this film.
Okay.
In this little story. David Alan Grier, man. Oh my God. I've never
that
seen
was
him
her,
like
wasn't
this.
it?
Yes.
Oh, girl from okay.
He wanted to, you know, the scenes at night when he sees like the light underneath the door and the door shakes and the monster's hand comes through the door.
Yeah.
He said that was inspired by the film from the 60s, The Haunting, and how a lot of stuff is more so implied with sounds and you don't actually see all the way what's behind the door.
Well, you know, speaking of that, I say you gotta love when those couple of shots where the hand,
Oh yeah, it
reaches
creeps
around.
through. Yeah, it almost reminds me of like the crate from Creep Show. The drawings, like the monster drawing and stuff, were done by the production designer's son.
Oh, okay.
And the director was saying in this, like, even though David Alan Grier is obviously like the big bad of the story, he wanted to make sure that the dynamic of the home felt dysfunctional, like with the mother like halfway opening the door for the teacher, like almost as if, he's in a situation where he can't really run to either parent.
Right. Yeah, and that comes across well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to get back to David Alan Grier, though, who plays the monster, we see him for the first time from Walter's POV as he sits up on the stairs. And because of David's reputation, Rusty was saying, people know him as a comedian.
Yeah, I know him as a comic actor.
He didn't want the audience to immediately assume, yes, this is the monster.
Right.
They basically, he wanted to make it almost like a red herring, but not. Like, okay, I think he's the monster, but maybe the twist is like the mom's the monster, or the teacher's the monster.
Yeah.
Or the monster's in his head. So you want to be able to straddle that ambiguity, and you need to go with an actor who is not traditionally known for playing these kind of characters. I mean, I know David Alan Grier best from his work on like In Living Color. So as a kid, seeing this movie and seeing him in this role, I don't think I'd ever see him play a role like this again after this film. It's very uncomfortable.
I can't think of any other serious role I've seen him in.
I like him a lot as a comedian and like as an actor, but I really hate him in this story, which sounds like a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Like, you're supposed to hate this guy. And
yeah,
I wanted to talk about, the big finale in this segment with, Walter's mother getting beaten, and then the voodoo drawing, basically, when he crumbles it up, and he basically reduces David Alan Grier to like a twisted pretzel of a human being.
This like mangled pile on the floor.
Yes. Those were all practical effects. The guy who did them, his name is Screamin' Mad George.
Okay.
You should look him up like in your free time and like watch some of his FX stuff on YouTube and like go on Google Images and look at some of the stuff that he's done. Screamin' Mad George is he is insane at special effects in horror movies. He makes some of the most twisted, diabolical creations ever. What comes to mind is the big finale of the 80s horror film Society by Brian Usna, who, you get like this big orgy of flesh and sweat, and just, it's one of the most disgusting scenes I've ever seen put on film. In this film, they worked with several different FX people, and we'll talk about them as they pop up. But Screamin' Mad George did David Alan Grier in the twisted up body thing at the end of this segment. He did that, and then he did. Oh, and he's like holding the frying pan, but his arm is like completely twisted backwards and around his head. He also made the devil in this film. So he has a very surrealist bent in his work, and I just absolutely love it. I want to just give him his props because his makeup effects in this scene, it's like a very again, I talk about like these memorable moments in production design, set pieces, and all this stuff. Like, this is one where I'm like, I want to see that again. And
I don't think it would have hit the same in CGI. I appreciate that they found a practical way to do that, because
nothing in this film
not
is
even
CGI.
like, yeah, no, I appreciate, because I think seeing him it adds to the comedic factor too, because it looks real, because it is real. So It's like, yo, this is like hilarious. Like, look at his body down there.
It got a big reaction from the test audiences when he got twisted up. You know, you get a lot of insight in this commentary as to like what people laughed at, what people cheered for. You know, like he almost remembers every reaction to every single moment in the test screenings.
You know, you know what's interesting about this is speaking of, like, I mean, we don't see this, it happens off screen, but you know, one of the kids dies, because, you know, during the scene where he's drawing the pictures and the teacher's like, what's that? He's like, you know, this is the monster. This is like one of the kids in his class who's like bullying him. And shortly after,
that got a cheer too from the audience, he said.
Oh, did it? The kid? Yeah. Okay, that's.
But I think you got I think you got a cheer because they realized that that's when the concept of the drawing doing like damage to someone.
Well, sure, but it was still a kid, though. Like, was I the only one concerned when, like, you see the kid on the stretcher get wheeled into the ambulance, and the teacher is like, "What happened?" And he was like, "He just fell down the stairs." And he was like, he broke like both his legs and his arms, and then I don't know, was he like a janitor or something? Like, boy must have had weak bones. You know, that got a pop out of me. That was funny, but you know, yeah, I mean, he basically gets voodooed into the hospital. And yeah, of course, David Alan Grier, what happens to him is great. I definitely cheer for that.
And I mean, you know, he earns it too, because you see him beat the shit out of the mom.
Oh, he's a terrible guy. And I want to say,
kill the kid, basically.
Yeah, he's about to kill and I noticed, I'm like, yo, what are you gonna do? Like, kill the teacher? You're gonna kill everybody? And it made me think, because when he comes in the house, he's wearing like a dress shirt, as if he has like an office job or something. I'm like, how is he this bad? Where does he work?
Right.
How is he this bad of a person that has such a straight edge job like this?
He's got the monster tattoo on his forearm, and it's like, oh shit, that's the monster. It's like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, you know. But I'm like, what in the world does he do for a living? Where he's such a ill-tempered person, but he wears a tie and a dress shirt every day. It's crazy.
That's call center vibes, I think.
Oh man. Okay, you know what? That fits him. Okay. Well, he had
a very like calm, professional demeanor, but he just sounded like from the moment he starts speaking in the film.
Well, he's menacing even when he's talking to the teacher.
Yeah, he's aggravated. You can just tell that he's
exactly from working at the call center.
Right, he's aggravated at dealing with all these people every single day.
It doesn't mean you need to take it out on your girlfriend and son. You know, it's just because, I mean, he's like the stepdad, because Walter says, like, you know, his dad died.
Some of the beating, by the way,
unless that was his actual dad, and he was just, you know,
Paula J. Parker, like, you know, some of, like, she was bleeding. They let the bleeding from the mouth stay in there. They let, like, a few strikes stay in, but the MPAA, that's another thing that they took the scissors to.
Well, and you know, we don't need to see explicit domestic violence at the point. I think what we saw was,
I mean, basically the two times they intervened were on the police brutality front and on the domestic abuse front. Everything else was pretty much left in the film.
Well, honestly, I think both were still pretty emphatic. So I don't think.
Yeah, well, I think they just felt. The director feels the same. He says that he thinks that everything still works. He would have rather left it in, though, but the studio thought it was a little gratuitous.
All right, well, we know about the studios.
You know, it's a horror movie. It's supposed to be scary.
Right. Well,
or what did Ice-T say? It's a horror movie. It's supposed to end horrible.
When did he say this?
It's at the beginning of the Mobb Deep song, Solidified. It's like a little audio clip that they play before the song starts.
Huh. Okay. Whenever we get to that song, I'm sure I'll hear it. But yeah, listen, shout out to Screaming Mad George. Shout out to this segment. I mean, I wrote hilarious and convincing effects in The Good Guys 1. I gave this segment an 8-.
Nice.
You know, I like it a lot. Yeah, the second
It's not
segment.
it's my second favorite segment. I think the next segment's my favorite because it's the first one I ever saw. It's the one that kind of spurred me to see the full movie.
Okay.
And
Well,
full disclosure, I love little fucking puppet things. I'm like Chucky, Dolly Dearest, the Living Doll, Talkie Tina
you
from
F with that Annabelle?
everything. All the little fuckers, I love them
Slappy,
all. Slappy
the
from
dummy.
Goosebumps, yep. If
Okay.
you are a reanimated, I'm like a toy guy too. Like I collect figures and shit. So like I love reanimated puppets and dolls and toys. I love Toy Story. Like I love when they come alive.
Okay.
Few things bring me more joy. I like clowns more than puppets.
All
Like
right.
you give me a good clown, I'm in. Except for It Chapter 2. We know how I feel about that one. But let's get into my favorite story. I got some interesting notes on this one, actually.
Okay.
This was like my favorite of the commentaries as
Okay.
well.
Well, my first thought when this comes on, and I'm like, oh no, more Politico stuff, because I mean we've had the police brutality, you know, and then we kind of got the
everything revolves
domestic
around
slash
social
child
issues.
abuse. Well,
Yeah.
right. But again, like current times, it's just clearly we're still dealing with this. So I'm just like, oh God, like here we go. Basically the guy is basically Trump. Like that's who he
Yeah,
is.
but
You know?
Rusty was saying at the time, well, the puppetry and everything he says is inspired by the Twilight Zone, Child's Play, Puppet Master, like all the puppet movies and shows, like the reanimated puppets and whatnot. But the character that Corbin Burson plays um, is inspired by two people, Jesse Helms, who used to have these anti-affirmative action commercials, which you hear them spoofing at the beginning of the segment, and David Duke, to the point where they actually...
He's a former Klan member.
Yeah, well, yeah, David Duke is, I think he's the head of the Klan now.
Or was, but the guy in this story they say he's a former
Klan member, and Duke is his last name, very clearly inspired by David Duke. Now, it was important for Rusty, he said, to cast Corbin in this role because even though this is one of, if not the most loathsome character in the entire film, his comedy still needed to land with the audience. So in the test screenings, he said the black audience reacted positively to the lines, like the comedy lines, where they were supposed to laugh at. So he says,
well, I can guess. Well, here's what's funny. I told my dad we were doing this review. This was the story he remembered most. He's like, oh, the little the little nigglets.
Like, well, it's funny because he mentions that, and he says there's debate amongst fans between what he actually said there.
I heard you little nigglins.
Yeah, that's what he was saying, and then some people think it's the way your dad heard it.
Yeah,
but regardless, he said that
he says a lot, bro.
He was really worried that those lines weren't going to land with the audience, but he said Corbin was such a pro, and he's such a likable actor that he was able to sell the lines while still being this guy that you want to see be done in by the end of the story. Now, there's certain things about the making of this story in particular that were a challenge. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts here. Do you know the scene where he hits the painting with the American flag? Like the flag's on the pole, he grabs it and he hits the painting with it. That was supposed to be a bat, but the American flag was there, and he thought, oh wow, this is like a good opportunity for symbolism. So he took that. That was an on-the-fly decision. The Kyoto brothers, who they did the Killer Clowns from Outer Space movie, and they did the dolls. They made the Killer Clowns, basically. They did the dolls for this. And as the dolls start to disappear from the mural, when you see the dolls moving, it's a mix between stop motion, digital rendering, and puppeteering.
Okay.
So there's a lot that went into getting these dolls. They did it like, 90% practical and just sped it up in post. But, the big reveal with all the dolls at the end, that was originally not in the film, but when they screened it for the test audience, originally the ending was Duke was going to be hanging from the flagpole hung by the American flag, but the audience specifically complained about not seeing the dolls get their revenge on him. So they went back and they actually had to shoot that scene afterwards. They did a reshoot. And the voodoo woman who in the rocking chair who ends up coming back is played by Rusty's mom.
Yeah, and you told me that off air, and I want to say, admittedly, I wasn't sure if I was going to give this segment a 7. Because it felt it was teetering on that, like, all right, this is kind of over. It was beating me upside the head.
Yeah.
With
not
like
subtle.
the point of it. Not very subtle at all. It's like, right, okay, this dude is cartoonishly racist. Slave dolls are coming back.
Whereas, like, even the first story handles this subject matter a little bit more delicately, let's say.
Right. Honestly, I was sold when the lady fades in the rocking chair. I laughed out loud, and I'm like, all right, that's 7-. You got it. I don't know what it is about her showing up finally, because I kind of assumed she wasn't going to appear, because throughout the segment, he keeps returning to the painting and more like dolls disappear and then show up in the house from the painting.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I was expecting, the voodoo lady to stay in the painting. And then at the end, she comes out of the painting and appears. And I'm like, yes!
Dude,
and that's what got it to 7-.
I love this story. I love this. Like, I love the comeuppance he receives. I love the puppets. I love the zombie puppet when he comes back after he thinks that he's like, he got rid of him. He's back, but he's like zombified a little bit. And just like the whole doll family, when they're all together and they're about to kill him, I'm fucking loving it, man. I think this is my favorite story out of all of them.
Here's the thing. It's a 7- for me. It by the end, I'm like, all right, okay. Just some of the comic value, like you said, the guy who plays a Duke, somehow he gets away with lines like "you little nigga ones," and I'm a putting into your nigga ass. I'm gonna blow your little nigga balls.
Those
I'm gonna blow off
lines,
your little nigga balls.
Those two lines in particular, he said got the biggest pop from the black test audience, and he was like, "All right, good, thank God." Like,
well, what got me actually? I mean, those were amusing, but it was like, the fuck did your little black ass come from? That's what got me. I don't know, that was very funny to me.
Oh,
and also no reparations, and he like throws. I'm like,
bro,
okay, bro.
When the doll first gets introduced and he swings from the chandelier onto him, I'm just like, all right, listen, this went from like a 7 to just like a flat 8, and then by the end, between the lady in the rocking chair and the whole doll gang showing out, 8+. 8+. We're so far. For me personally, I'm going 8+, 8+ on these 3 stories, and I love the wraparound. The wraparound's like a fucking 9 to me, just because Mr. Sims is a fucking legend. So what could go wrong? An 8, an 8, an 8, a 9 for the wraparound. Oh,
well, here's the thing. Before we get to what goes wrong, I just want to say this interesting aspect that really isn't discussed in terms of like what his character is supposed to represent. So like Duke's, what would I call him? Like political advisor, I guess,
yes.
Or like PR guy. I said out loud as I was watching involuntarily, I'm like, this dude is cooning hard. Like, he is like the super coon, bro. Like, he knows this guy he's working with. He admits, he says, you're a sick fuck, Duke. But he keeps working for him. Talking about you might even get some black votes. I'm like, bro, do you have any respect? This is why you fell down the stairs and died.
Yep.
He probably wouldn't have died if, the voodoo lady and the souls of the slaves saw you be like, you know what, I can't do this, and just left. But no, they had to get rid of you first. Like, you was cooning too hard. And last thing I want to say is, yeah, his man was getting his jokes off and being racist, and I said he going clan crazy in that house. But he met his end. He got chewed up by little nigwins, And yeah, so 7- on that one. But
oh, the little redacteds rule.
Okay.
I love them. I couldn't own toys of them because they resemble too much. Like, they look a little suspect,
A little minstrelly.
You want to talk about looking a little suspect? Let's get into story number 4. The story, every time I watch this movie, I'm like, oh yeah, this story's in here. Because I feel like we didn't need a 4th story. 3 was fine. There's 3 guys, Why do we need a 4th? You tell 3 guys 3 stories, right? Who tells 3 guys 4 stories? Mr. Sims, apparently. Mr. Sims has one more tale for us. And this is where, listen, a lot of this shit's not for me to comment on, so I'm just going to read through the notes.
It is for me to comment on.
So I want to know what you think about this when I'm done reading through the notes on this particular segment. Okay? Okay. So, Rusty says the 4th story is the most important in his opinion. It deals with, quote, black on black crime. Latin chanting. He says he hears Latin chanting, the oh, hey, oh, hey. He wanted to put that in there because he sees it in a lot of horror movies, but only in scary scenes with like demons, never in real life scenes. So he wanted to put it to a real life gang shootout. Rosalind Cash as Dr. Cushing. He wanted more female characters in the film, so he satisfied that in this segment. Prepare him for the transfer. So they sent him to this, whatever you want to call it, this experimentation room. He wanted the place to look like a mad scientist's lair. He shot it at Griffith Park here in Los Angeles. Idea is to get weirder and weirder. He wanted cages to be like hamster cages where they couldn't stand up. Says it's the spookiest segment yet. A dominatrix once actually tried to buy the table that is in the film, but... Oh,
really?
Yeah, couldn't get it, so had one custom made by the same person who made it. There's the montage of hangings and burnings.
I gotta drop for that person, but keep talking.
Montage of hangings and burnings took a long time, he says, because he wanted to find...
I found the drop.
You sick freak!
All right, continue.
He wanted to juxtapose those images. He wanted to find the perfect images of hangings and burnings, so it took a really long time. And he wanted to juxtapose that with images of black on black crime and gang killings. This is the shit that really scares me, he says. Wanted to make a commentary on gangster rap. Don't emulate it. It's just like watching Scarface. You don't go and be Tony Montana afterwards. The victims...
It's only entertainment.
It's only entertainment. The victims confront Crazy K, Strobe City. Greg Nicotero, who did the FX on the movie Creepshow, did the FX on his gun wound victim, like the people he shot, like the wounds on their heads and stuff. So if you're familiar with the movie Creepshow, Creepshow 2, the TV series as well, he does all the special effects for those. I don't give a fuck. And I concur. And then, yeah, that was about it for me, but I'd like your thoughts on the director's, I guess, like, intentions with this one, because, I mean, this is where you should be weighing in, not me.
All right, so here's the thing. Black on black crime is a phrase that's existed for decades. Only in recent times have people examined the phrase and determined that it's problematic. For reasons that make sense. But back in the 90s, this seemed to be a phrase that was not only accepted by white people who probably shouldn't have been puppeting it, but black people as well. You
right.
know,
Where I feel like in recent years it's been more reframed as respectability politics.
right. We have phrases exactly like respectability politics now. Now here's the thing. Wanting black people to stop killing fellow black people is dope. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that sentiment. I'm 100% that sentiment. The issue is when you examine, you know, the symptom, I suppose, without the catalyst. And nowadays, these days, we're looking at why these things take place. Why are black people in these communities where they're just sort of bred to prey on each other? And we know we can trace it back to a lot of things. This is very blamey of the people who are violent to their fellow black person. Because we were still in the early days, I guess, of trying to solve these problems. So we just look at the people who are holding the guns and say, stop doing that, instead of asking why they're holding the guns. You know, what leads them to holding the guns. And it's funny because during this segment, you know, during the Strobe thing, which I'll get back to, you know, the sensory deprivation room.
By the way, if you're prone to seizures, don't watch this segment.
I literally wrote, they're trying to give me a seizure in the name of respectability politics. Okay, don't appreciate it. But here's the thing. He's like, you know, she's like, you know, what did she say? He's like, you know, you've turned into like a living nightmare. Like you're causing nightmares. And he's like, yeah, well, what about my life? What about my nightmares or something? And he's like, so I became the nightmare. And I'm like, all right, stop right there. Cause we're on to something. He's touching on something, saying that now, of course, he's made it to look like he's making a ton of excuses, which he is, but he's close to admitting that there's something in his upbringing, something that cultivated this behavior, you know? And he's acting this way because of things that are unresolved in his brain and his heart and his life and his soul, you know. And they don't discuss any of that. They just discuss the outcome of the things that have turned him or that make him, or that have spawned from him being a nightmare to the community. So this is the thing. You send the guy to the Hotep Institute, you know, woke labs. And I mean, 90s woke labs, because the new woke labs wouldn't have done this. You know, the new woke labs, we wouldn't have woke labs because there aren't any prisons, right? That's what they're trying to get to. No prisons. So
they're definitely not going to strap someone onto like
and bombard them with like
and spin them around like nonstop while like bombarding them with horrific imagery.
Trying to be like, see how you guys are wearing ski masks and the Klan are wearing hoods? You're the same. You know, like, bro, it's just
it doesn't land for me. Now, it's not for me to speak on
good sentiment, bad execution, but I will just say we were still in the early stages of trying to figure these very delicate and nuanced issues out. So I'm not really mad at the segment for what it's trying to do.
Bad segment. I think that there's some things that I find interesting about it from a visual perspective. It doesn't land for me the way the other three stories do.
It doesn't land at all. I'm black, and it doesn't land.
And it doesn't feel like that same sort of tale of comeuppance like the other three stories were. No,
you know, it's just.
Although it does provide a little bit more meat to the rest of the, you know, the finale, the wraparound story, because as it turns out, you know,
well, right. This is the framing for the wraparound story. We find out that the three people who killed Crazy K, the irredeemable psychopath, that, you know, they are the three people in the funeral home with Mr. Sims. So yeah, that alone is worth, I guess, I at least thing think that we have to get.
Obviously, it adds more to what I think is one of the greatest wraparound segments in anthology history. So, by the way, you know when one of the guys has to slap Mr. Sims upside the head at the end?
Yeah.
The director was saying that the actor was really scared to do it because he's like, I can't do it. You're Clarence Williams III. He said, lay into me, hit me. So he made him hit him for real. And yeah, like they killed Crazy K. Clarence,
well, they killed Crazy K.
Clarence is the devil, Mr. Sims, you know?
Yeah, and this is I just want to say a few more things. You know, at the end, basically, it's like it feels like they showed such great restraint in mixing in the social commentary with the horror and comedic elements and making it successful as a result. And then in this final segment, they just lose all subtlety. And I'm like, why? What happened? Why does it fall apart? I'm like, what in the Roland Martin am I watching right now? You know, and it ends up getting a 6+. It's the only segment I don't care for. But it's one of those. It's like what they're going for isn't the problem. It's the heavy-handed approach.
I give it a 6+ too, and I might even lean 7- on it just because of how it beefs up the movie overall. Like if it's a 6+, it makes the wraparound a 9. If it's a 7-, the wraparound's an 8+. You know what I mean?
There's a lot more absurdity too and inconsistency with the characterization. I mean, Crazy K's sideburns, I don't know if you noticed, but they stay the same in jail. And I'm like, who's cutting his sideburns in jail like this? You know?
Yeah, like exactly. It's like he has very like they're very styled. His sideburns.
And he was shot like I don't know 5-6 times in the chest before the cops show up. That suddenly appeared, by the way, like 5,000 cop cars, and he's like saved by motherfucking cops.
They
just like appear.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
He's like in jail. We see him in jail, indeterminate or I don't know, some undetermined time later. And I don't see any bullet wounds. Like he's just doing sit-ups. He's cut, and I'm like, all right, I guess. And the lady who's being like cold to him is like, I don't think you're redeemable at all. If it was up to me, like you're scum.
Dr. Cushing. Yeah.
But then later on, she's like trying to be tender, like I'm giving you a chance. I'm like, I thought you were like a respectability. Now you're like tender and like compassionate and empathetic and like trying to help and like please listen to me. Like
it's so interesting to me that like the artist, the man who made this film, he wrote it, he co-wrote it, he directed it, and his favorite segments, like the one that from everyone that I talk to, it's always like the one where they're like, yeah, I don't like that one at the end that much.
Really?
So it's just, yeah, I mean, I asked you today, I'm like, yeah, about that fourth one, though. And you're like, we'll get to it. Yeah, look,
it's not about, clearly I don't have I'm black. So, of course, I don't have an issue with social commentary. We need to address these things.
The whole movie is social commentary. If I had a problem with social commentary,
so that's not the issue.
Kind of social
it's just
commentary.
Right.
I would have disliked the first story.
You know, it's just poorly executed. That's
to
all.
Me,
that's
the
problem.
But in its poor execution, there's some interesting stylistic choices, and I like how it feeds into the wraparound. So it's not completely useless.
Yeah.
We
come out of that final thing, and that's when the three people, and they're like, hey, how did you know all that? And that's when they start getting defensive. They pull out the guns. They're like, listen, just take us to the shit. And then
you'll be knee deep in shit.
Yeah, you'll be knee deep in the shit. You know, and so what happens is Mr. Sims leads them to, he's like, I hid it down here. He's like, where else? The coffins. And he's like, and they run over there excitedly, open the coffins, and of course, in the classic twist, their bodies are in the coffin. Like, what is this, man? What kind of shit you trying to pull? You know? Now, I don't know if you noticed, the first two guys, when they open the coffins, like they zoom in the shot, it's clearly them in the coffin, like the actors. The third guy has a doll. Did you notice that?
No, I've seen this movie so many times. I've never noticed.
Yeah, like I noticed. I'm like, why couldn't he do a shot? Maybe he had a phobia or something. I don't know. But yeah, they made a doll for him.
Casket. That's interesting.
Yeah, maybe. That's just my theory. But like, yeah, he's like a doll.
It's not addressed in the audio commentary.
Really?
I certainly would have made note of that, of course.
Yeah, well, definitely go back and check it out. Yeah, like the other two guys are in the car, and then it's just, the bald dude is just like this. I mean, it looks enough like him, but, it's just, and of course, so Mr. Sims turns into the demon. Always scared me.
Yep.
Eyes start glowing red.
I love the transformation. I love him just like doing his devil shit.
Oh, yeah, the walls crumble, and they burning up in hell.
And then, the credits kick in, and by God, you just watch an hour and 37-minute movie, perfect length for a horror movie. 5 tales, really. And you had a good time. Right. Life is good.
Life is good, you know. So 8- on this thing for me, and 9- for you. I mean, this is like a film I wouldn't mind watching. I would love to watch it with someone who's never seen it. It's just one of those films. It's like it's good stuff. You know?
It's going to be number 3 on the board behind Training Day, Hustle and Flow. It's going to be the number 3.
Wow.
On the movie board.
It.
Will the soundtrack be in the top 3? Well, hit the music.
Get the fuck out of here, you motherfucker!
Hit the Moulz and Mel of the movies. Well,
I got you.
One song went up for me, Mel.
Oh, word?
Yeah, but hit my music.
All right, here's your music.
This Wednesday on Moulz and Mel at the movies, will you get rich or will you die trying? Fuck it. Let's do both. Let's get rich, let's die trying. It's Get Rich or Die Trying, the movie and the soundtrack. It's G-Unit, baby. The G-Unit soldier returns to the battlefield to battle all the fucking haters, all the G-Unotters out there. Alright? Are they fake news or are they telling the truth? I don't fucking know. It's Tales from the Hood. It's the review, but the movie season's almost over, you fucks. Sick of you.
Hey, it's Mel from Rap Rankings. To hear the full episode this clip comes from and all of the other episodes, check the link in the description, stop by raprankings.com, or search Rap Rankings on your favorite podcast platform. And please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting to help us grow the channel and continue our journey as hip-hop's first and premier extreme podcast.